In 2004, Paranoia Agent premiered in Japan, an episodic anime from acclaimed visionary director taken well before his time, Satoshi Kon. Kon being one of the most influential media creators of all time, with his work like Perfect Blue, Paprika, and of course, Tokyo Godfathers. Paranoia Agent was a social commentary on the use of kawaii culture to mask the underlying self-destructive overworking and delusions of grandeur that were destroying Japan's cultural core at the time. It talked of children not being able to separate the real from the digital, creators of cute things being distraught when their creations are commercialized, and what was once a creative endeavor was now a full-time job. It showed how men could justify their horrible actions as being a hero of justice that's just misunderstood. Paranoia Agent laid the cute culture bare and tried its best to show people that it's okay to not be okay, to feel lost, because that is what corporations and consumerism can do to you. They can destroy your attention span, make you question your identity, destroy your joy for a profit. And that's not even me reading into the series. While it's cerebral, absolutely, and some episodes are a little bit more out there than others, the messages are pretty overt. Because it's not the message, it's how the message is told that makes Paranoia Agent such a unique and timeless classic. It's very funny how a lot of the messages in the series can feel relevant 20 years later. And if I'm being honest, I think that's why Common Side Effects has come out at the perfect time. Paranoia Agent actually aired on Adult Swim in 2005, and I genuinely think it is the closest thing that has ever aired in the block to come even a fraction close to what Common Side Effects is. Ahoy hoy gang, if this is your first time with us, welcome! And if you're joining us from a previous video, hey, we love to see it, and I hope you're doing well. Season 2 of Common Side Effects was already announced before the end of the first season, so there's no question that there's more to the story. But what we got this season was probably some of the most inventive animation ever made. This is an experience. So, while I will be critical and look at the series through lenses, make no mistake, Common Side Effects is something you absolutely must experience. And so, there's only 3 questions to ask. What worked, what failed, what tortoise snappings will be curtailed? There's a lot to be seen and a lot of mycology to be done here in Season 1! So yeah, the first episode is a pilot. What's actually really cool here is that the, I guess, cold open for the episode is actually the first initial preview we ever got of the series. And after the intro sequence, you're introduced to the new style of the show, and while it does take some getting used to, my god, it is gorgeous. This series, right out the gate, is one of the prettiest animated series of all time. I have never appreciated backgrounds and action shots more. I know that's a dumb thing to say, but compare this to, Squidbillies, Aqua Teen, or the iconic Space Ghost of those Coast to Coast. Look at how far Adult Swim animation projects have come. Yes, the character designs take some getting used to, but the bigger heads honestly remind me of the homunculus concept. Larger facial features and heads to showcase where most of their sensory sensations come from. We're first introduced to our protagonist Marshall as he crashes a Ryuta shareholders meeting to call them out. Rick gets him kicked out, and Rick's assistant Francis recognizes Marshall and runs after him. Marshall, our main character, would be played by Dave King, who is honestly more of a writer and producer. He doesn't even have any other major voice acting credits to his name, but he is astoundingly good in this role. Francis would be played by Emily Pendergast, who also doesn't have a ton of voice acting credentials, but also does just a brilliant job. And Rick is played by another animation newcomer, Mike Judge. Good for him for branching out. I hope it works out for him. So yeah, the series was executive produced by Mike Judge and Greg Daniels, the same team behind the small indie classic, don't know if you've seen it, King of the Hill. So naturally, you'd think this was a comedy, right? And honestly, watching the pilot, it's easy to see why. Even our first introduction to agents Capano and Harrington is objectively hysterical. Joseph Lee Anderson and Martha Kelly are just perfect in their roles. It's so difficult to show chemistry in just vocal performances, but they both deliver their lines flawlessly and you get a great idea of who these characters are. They are fully immersed in them and you love to see it. Then there's not even a single phoned-in role in the show. Nick, played by Ben Feldman, downright enchanting. Diane, played by Shannon Woodward, phenomenal. This episode is the slowest the show will be, and it really takes its time establishing what the show is going to be. There's a lot of conversational humor as opposed to consequential. More offhand dialogue-based jokes and less Marshall just getting hit in the nuts with a bag of nickels and getting his tortoise stolen. Very, very high-level writing, you see. And I mean, this is a visual spectacle. Marshall is talking to Francis in a park and we find out Francis's mom has dementia and is living in a care home. Everyone initially thought that Marshall had died in a plane crash, but he was really living off the grid after discovering an incredible mushroom that could potentially cure any disease and heal almost any wound. He snaps the neck of a pigeon, slips the mushroom in its beak, and we see it come back to life in this cerebral, mind-bending display with just these tiny little guys. And that's when we really see the show take shape. Marshall has a mushroom that could invalidate the entire pharmaceutical industry. He could change the world, and he just genuinely wants to help people with it. I think Marshall is the perfect protagonist for this show. He's a fat, bearded, too smart for his own good, but honest and genuine to a fault weird guy who just genuinely wants to help people. Meanwhile, Capano and Harrington are hunting him down because they were told he's the big-time drug lord. They raid his compound, he bolts into the woods, and the episode ends with him calling Francis with his beloved Socrates in his arms. The first episode is fast, funny, and never overcomplicates itself. It lets the story play out with really only about 6 main characters. There'll be more as time goes on, but they keep the scope very, very small so you can relate to these characters and who they really are. And I gotta say, these characters are perfect. They're human, they have flaws, and they're not just one thing. Rick, for example, could be this bumbling moron of a corporate executive, but as the series goes on, he becomes more and more complex. You can see why he got to where he is. No character in this show is infallible, and that's amazing. Gorgeous animation, flawless voice acting, and a compelling story right out the gate. Pilot is easily one of the best pilot episodes of all time. It's a mushroom appreciating 10 out of 10. The episode opens with some backstory on why Marshall was chased out of Peru for digging around near a Reutical dump site where he discovered the mushrooms. This would also be where we're introduced to Cecily, played by Sidney Poitier's daughter and vocal powerhouse, Sidney Tamia Poitier. And Jonas Backstein, played by Danny Huston, who is giving just, I mean, my word, a career best performance. He plays Jonas absolutely perfectly. And Jonas definitely looks nothing like the CEO of BlackRock. Don't Google it. I'm sure none of it is connected. Don't consume media. It's all just sort of there. Anyway, Jonas offers to help with their Marshall problem and gets his men on the job. Francis goes to meet with Marshall, who disappears when he realizes he's being tailed. I genuinely love that Francis is both worried about her friend and looking for a potential new drug to make a ton of money with. She's complex when she didn't need to be, and Nick is so simple and it works for him. Man deserves all the good cheese with the cow on it. He's a dumb experience. You know he's temporary. You know he does not have the legs to be a lasting character, but they have fun with him, and I appreciate that. Anyway, speaking of experiences, when Marshall notices that Socrates isn't feeling well, he goes to his exotic animal peddling half-brother Zane for help. Zane has a drug-induced frenzy to make the medicine and gets Socrates all taken care of. We also get Campano and Harrington investigating Marshall's house, and we really see that they're not idiots. They're very competent agents, but eccentric, but they also work really, really well together. They start to question how evil Marshall could really be, but keep up with their mission. Marshall asks for some colleagues to destroy evidence, and they end up burning his house down right as Francis shows up and gets her scared off. Marshall ends up getting attacked and has to fight for his life while running away. Marshall's very smart about how he uses the mushrooms to survive events. Even in the last episode, he took one before the plane crashed to survive, and it really showcases he's a genuinely clever and smart guy. He doesn't usually succeed through just dumb luck, but sometimes that does happen. He's always working towards a goal and even manages to sneak onto a train as the episode ends. this is when you really start to see that this isn't going to be a comedy. And again, this is much more like an anime on Adult Swim than any of their usual offerings. You could watch an episode of Smiling Friends or the critically acclaimed Royal Crackers and not really be all that thrown off. But this, if you aren't watching every single week, you're gonna be confused and or enthralled if you just catch a random episode on some idle Sunday. It sets its own tempo and is really best experienced through streaming. Lakeshore Limited is a business lunch ditching 10 out of 10. Yeah, spoilers, every episode is going to be 10 out of 10, because yeah, it's one long linear narrative. Each episode feeds from the episodes before it and becomes a more and more actualized idea. The numbers don't matter. This is just a great episode. They're all great episodes. We get the additions of Andy Daly, the absolute legend that he is, Lynn Shay, Shalita Grant, and Bob Stevenson, who will also start showing up more throughout the series. Frances goes to visit her mom and sees that Marshall left a mushroom for her. She feeds it to her mom, hoping and begging for anything to change, and when it doesn't immediately help, she lashes out at Marshall and says it failed. She didn't want false hope that her mom might actually remember her again. It really showcases the grief of having someone in your family with dementia. Seeing this once vibrant person not even remember who you are, what their name is, or anything. That blank stare that just can't be taken away. It's a cruel and unjust fate. We then meet Amelia, the mycologist, who helps Capano and Harrington and discovers one of the blue mushrooms. Her son is sick, but we also see some light flirting between her and Harrington. There's layers to these people, and here's a wonderful little thing. Marshall buys an ice cream truck to get away, and as he's driving, he notices a man barely hanging on after crashing, avoiding a deer. And that's the beauty of Marshall's character. He just wants to help. He doesn't understand the consequences yet, but he knows what he has will help. He saves the man, giving him one of his precious mushrooms, and continues his journey. Harrington attempts to go on a date with Amelia, but gets stood up, and Capano watches samurai movies in his underwear. They're all very human moments. And I know I talked a lot in the every episode of King of the Hill reviewed video about how King of the Hill could realistically have been live action with very minor tweaking, but I really don't think any other medium would do Common Side Effects justice. They are taking full advantage of the series being animated. Again, vibrant landscapes, beautifully vivid hallucinations. I mean, it is perfect on every level and every angle you approach it from. And yet, I can still absolutely see why it may not be everyone's cup of tea. We're 3 episodes in, and the funny moments are fewer and fewer. This is not a comedy. It's a funny drama, and that's not what a lot of people are expecting. Again, much like Paranoia Agent, the humor is there to more add brevity to a commentary that may be a little too real otherwise. Marshall then arrives at his old mentor Hildy's, and oh my god, do I have some fun facts for you. So Hildy is actually played by Sue Rose, who does an absolutely fantastic job making her an easy character to hate. She's just that good. But fun fact, Sue Rose was also the creator of Pepper Ann, and was the creator and main voice of Digimon the Movie opening act series, Angela Anaconda. In what world would you expect that? Again, she does a wonderful job showing Hildy as this just ravenous for knowledge person that's been driven almost insane by her pursuit of the mushrooms, and she's even willing to shoot herself to force Marshall to save her and prove that it's real. That is dedication. She is willing to risk everything for her pursuit. Okay, I know this is gonna sound so odd, but she reminds me a lot of like early 90s and 2000s Disney villains. Very odd, I know, but Hildy is in a lot of ways in that same vein as, say, Clayton or Governor Ratcliffe. Their hubris and desire pushing all reason from their head. She's got this lifelong passion pushing her to the point she'll do anything to get what she wants. She is a brilliant antagonist for the series, just like Jonas. Both are greedy and manipulative in their own ways. They both want the mushrooms for their own reasons. Frances flies off with Rick and her boyfriend to a conference in Switzerland, and the episode ends with Frances's mom healing and starting to talk again. Again, yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 episode that really shows off what the series is going for. thought-provoking, engaging, cerebral. It does not want you to be a passive viewer, and I think that owes a lot to the creators of the show. Joseph Bennett, who also made Scavenger's Reign, understands the capabilities of animation and how you can make it elevate the story you want to tell. And Steve Helly understands comedic dialogue better than most, thanks to his work on a little show called American Dad. American Dad TBS era review available right now. Another just very funny coincidence, but the man wrote some of my favorite American Dad episodes like Red October Sky, Every Which Way But Lose, and NSA, No Snoops Allowed. Like, this is a perfect marriage of voice talent, of writing, of animation that makes this a flawless series. Marshall goes to buy some land in North Carolina, and this is where I have to have one minor, itty bitty tiny gripe with the series. Mike Judge is so many characters. None of the performances are bad, don't get me wrong, but not only is he Rick, who feels very inspired by Lumbergh from Office Space, he's also the small town sheriff and several other characters that'll pop up throughout the show. It just sort of takes you out of it for a moment when you hear his voice again and again. When Marshall moves into his little trailer, we're introduced to Rusty, played by the series co-creator Steve Helly, and he's just this fantastic, weird, odd little ball of energy. He's a wild redneck with an earnest heart and crazy ideas. Frances flies home to see her mom now that she's awake and aware, and she cries over being able to actually spend time with her again. She then runs off to find Marshall and help with his quest while he's hunted down by more assailants. She finds him and they reconcile. We even get a little flashback to when the two met. Even though you know Frances is using him to some degree, you can feel that there's a genuine emotion and connection between the two. He gave her mom a cure. She got to spend more time with her because Marshall was willing to sacrifice one of the few mushrooms he had. He didn't do it for anything more than to help an old friend, and that's perfect. And look at how much more the world has opened up in just 4 short episodes. In the beginning, it was just a few set pieces here and there. Now, Frances is flying back from Switzerland to be a part of all the moving pieces going on. You may not have noticed it, but your brain did. We get some globe-trotting in the beginning with Marshall's Peruvian adventure, but that's really about it. Now you're seeing the global scale of what's being set up. And all things considered, if there was ever a slow episode of the show, it'd probably be this one. And even then, it's still incredibly gripping and pulls you right up to an explosive final confrontation with one of the assassins. It's terrific. They know how to keep your attention. But if this was the one episode you caught as your first introduction to the show, I don't think you'd get what you want out of it. It would leave you confused and stunned, but I can only hope you give it a try to find out what happens next. Dump Site is a rib preparing 10 out of 10. Marshall heals a boy to gain the trust of Rusty and the sheriff, and Frances is able to record it and send the video to Rick to show off the wonder drug. Capano and Harrington stake out the homestead while Marshall and Frances try to figure out how to get the mushrooms to grow. It's another slower episode, but the visuals, my god, they make you forget that not a ton happens throughout the episode. Again, much like Paranoia Agent, not every episode is going to be a groundbreaking epic, but it doesn't need to be. I've talked about it a lot in the past, but tempo is super important when you're creating a streamable, bingeable show. You want to keep the audience's attention and keep them enthralled so they keep coming back for more and more. This is a chance for Marshall and Frances to grow closer, to work together, and when Frances takes Socrates to see where he'd plant the mushrooms, they find out that his little turtle turds are the fertilizer the mushrooms need to be able to be cultivated. By the end of the episode, Marshall's getting arrested for the burning down of his own home and bust to prison where he can be properly extinguished. And like both antagonists for this series, Hildy and Jonas, make sense. They're both greedy in their own ways and they want to destroy and cultivate the mushroom for their own selfish reasons. Rick sees the marketing potential behind it, and at the end you can really tell Marshall is the only one with a genuine view of a brighter tomorrow thanks to the mushrooms. He genuinely wants to fix things, and now he's in that all is lost moment. He wants to make things better, but it's getting harder by the moment. Star-tel-lite is a breath of fresh air. 10 out of 10. The opening of this episode is glorious. We're introduced to a hitman that very efficiently gets himself incarcerated to take out Marshall. He only takes $100 from the register, fires a gun, and makes sure he doesn't hurt anyone. He's very, very meticulous, and it's great. Capano and Harrington find Socrates and bring him back to Frances as she drives off and the relationships start to unwind. Marshall struggles in prison and tries to find his place, while Frances' mom tells Frances to use her connections to market the mushroom as a wonder drug so it can save more people like it saved her. Frances even visits Marshall and he tells her to absolutely not work with any subsidiary of Ryudacal, not knowing who she actually is. Capano and Harrington are split up and sent on separate missions, while Frances sells her soul after a motivational speech by Kiki, played by the absolutely phenomenal Christine Coe. And Marshall fights for his life to get out of prison after Hildy tips him off that Frances works with Ryudacal, even eventually getting confirmation when he calls Ryudacal and gets her on the line. This is the all characters are at their lowest point moment. And one thing I particularly love is that Frances is genuinely conflicted when she makes this switch. She doesn't know what the right choice is, and she isn't just turning coat for the sake of turning coat immediately. Now, she also doesn't take too much convincing, but it's easy to see why. She'd have the research to find out the lasting effects of the drug. She'd have the distribution to get it out. That's perfect. That's a genuine temptation that would sway anyone, especially with a sizable paycheck attached to it. You can do the wrong thing and justify it for all the right reasons. Oh, look at that! Delusions of grandeur, just like Paranoia Agent. Crazy! Again, the colors and set pieces of the episode make it feel incredible. When Frances is with her mom, it's all very warm colors and soft lighting. When Socrates is on screen, it's very bright and vibrant when he explores the forest. But for the bulk of the episode, it's grays and blacks. It's dimly lit, and they really make you experience the coldness of prison. There's so much attention to detail, and it's just genuinely something truly spectacular. 10 out of 10. Duh. I don't know. Something Socrates, 10 out of 10. Marshall is saved by the leader of the prison, Christopher, which I gotta say is probably the only time I would ever believe Andy Daly could play a prison boss. I mean, look at the guy. He's everyone's favorite dad joke supplying uncle. He doesn't really fit in that role, but his vocal performance absolutely works. Frances is enjoying her new promotion and all the money she could ever need, but her mom dies when she falls out of a tree she was compelled to climb. Frances is distraught and conflicted at the funeral because she doesn't know if she should hate the mushrooms for making her lose her mom again, or if she should love that it gave her more time with her. And this is when my opinion of Rick does a full 180. Rick comes to the funeral and he sets up a foundation in Frances' mom's name. Rick has always been played as this bumbling moron CEO, but he knows how important Frances' mom was to her, and he genuinely wants to do something nice for her. It's a very human moment for Rick, and it's these moments, these subversions of stereotypical behaviors that add that extra layer to the show. Even the prison leader Christopher, who's really only in like 2 episodes, does have some duality to him. He runs the prison and things need to be worth his while, but he's not some full-on psycho. He's like an ogre, he's got layers. Capano goes and hunts a Sudafed scoundrel with his new partner, and Agent Harrington goes to find some party pills, and obviously they hate their new partners and dynamics, so they want to get back together. Marshall runs into the mycologist Amelia, and she slips him some tetrodotoxin, aka Blowfish toxin, so he can fake his own death and get out of prison. I'll admit, the Marshall prison bit feels both necessary and underutilized. Other than Marshall finding out that Frances works for Ryudacal, he doesn't really have that introspective moment or that growth that pushes him over the top to prepare him for the 3rd act. He's just sort of floating there, not trying to make trouble, just trying to make it to Upside Down Elephant Rock. I don't know, I would have liked a little bit wider angle with Marshall in prison, just a little bit more time with him, but I guess it does make sense in the long run. Blowfish is a fugu fine dining, 10 out of 10. Amelia's son Wyatt is fully healed thanks to the mushroom, so she's a true believer in the ways of the fungi, determined to help Marshall. Capano and Harrington start figuring out who's behind everything and how the government is working with Big Pharma, so they stop asking questions. And yeah, this is the Rev Up episode. I gotta say, Capano and Harrington at the racetrack is terrific. It reminds you that they are good agents. They are great at their jobs. They have comedic relief moments. They are eccentric, but they are very, very effective, even if they're being told they're not. Marshall gets Socrates from Francis breaks up with Nick, and that's all fine and good. Even get a new Zane moment, which is great. He's starting to slip a little bit, and that's always fun. But the real meat of this episode, the real beauty of it, comes from when Rick meets with Jonas, who tells Rick he's crushing the production of the pill. A miracle that could cure anything? That would throw the world into chaos. Again, career best performance by Danny Huston. I didn't even recognize it was him. He's done a lot in his tenure, but this is a chilling delivery that tears everything else away from this episode. I love this scene. It's easily one of the best of the entire show. It shows why he's so determined, why he believes what he believes. He says it so resolutely, almost like he's unwavering. But by the end of the episode, he's getting diagnosed with cancer, and you immediately know what he's aiming to do. The episode ends with Marshall returning to his little hideaway that's been turned into a compound by Hildy, who also taught Amelia. The show is entering its final act, and it's just genuinely glorious. This is how you set up a true cinematic conclusion. All the pieces are on the board, everyone is where they need to be, and it's perfect. Again, absolutely not an Adult Swim show, but this is masterful storytelling. 10 episodes and not a one out of place. They've maintained the tempo to this point, and you can even hear the music swell more and more as we hit the end of the episode. This is the end game. Marshall reluctantly teams up with Hildy because she has the compound and the means to distribute the mushroom. They start to heal people and dictate who gets treatment. Some not being treated because they're just old and not actually sick, others because their wound could just heal naturally over time. Things seem to be going well until we find out that Hildy is cultivating new ways to distribute the mushrooms to make some extra cash. Special teas and trip-inducing products and the like. Really been dancing around demonetization in the video if you couldn't tell. Marshall is furious that they're trying to sell their miracle, and he even gets attacked by the man he saved after the car crash. The man rambling about how he keeps seeing these little guys and doesn't know if anything is real anymore. And I gotta say, the little guys, they don't say anything, but they are such a fantastic addition. They feel so trippy as they fall over and turn into puzzle pieces and slip around. It feels so much more visceral, and I love how their mouths are always like slightly hanging open. They're just sort of stunned and staring in all the time. They have really taken on an identity all their own, and it's just great to see people starting to slip because of the mushroom. This miracle cure does have some side effects. What do these little guys want? Are these little guys real? It's fantastic. Capano and Harrington investigate Zane and keep trying to go deeper, but Harrington stops and tells Capano he'll have to do it himself before she ends up a member of an FBI raid team and goes her own way. Capano finds Amelia and wants to go to the compound, while Hildy takes Marshall out into the mountains and pushes him over the cliff's edge. To his demise. I mean, you have Jonas growing sicker and more desperate throughout the episode. He's going around trying to find any mushrooms he can, desperate to find the blue mushroom. You have Francis starting to spiral. You have Rick just giving up and doing his own thing. Okay, so forgetting all of that, something really cool about this episode is that it has a different opening. Same music, but it's cut over the building of the compound. It's inventive and unique, and sure, other series do it too, but it adds to that cinematic feel of the finale. They didn't have to go this hard, it's just Adult Swim. And yet, as we turn towards the last episode of the season, the tension is very, very real. Cliff's Edge is a rock to its core, 10 out of 10. And here we are, the season finale. Capano goes to the camp and is able to find Marshall and give him a mushroom to save his life, but not before he's able to contact Frances in the, I guess, in-between mushroom dreamscape, even drawing in a wine stain in the restaurant to get her attention. And this is a brilliant showcase that Capano is a great cop. He knew Hildy was lying, he knows how to read people, and he was able to effectively find Marshall and save him at the very last moment. That's fantastic for his character. The raid starts and Jonas uses it as an opportunity to sneak in, and instead of just taking one mushroom, starts eating as many as he can, and we get his dream world. Everything is corrupted, and for once, he's powerless. His body is snapping under its own weight, and bit by bit he loses more of his humanity and control, never truly waking up. It's such a beautifully twisted display. I was stunned this was coming from something on Adult Swim that, again, wasn't an anime. I mean, to reference classic paintings like Christina's World is just not something you'd expect. Sure, there are other shows like Venture Brothers, but this is something truly unique. And even American Dad does make more than a couple smart references here and there, but it's a very offhand. These references just make you appreciate the art of everything on display here. Even the raid itself is a gorgeously violent display. I know that sounds really messed up, but if you watch it, you will see the way the flames dance, the way they have set everything up. It's not, where they're just clipping the same shots of someone firing over and over and over again. Every bit of these 23-minute episodes feels unique. It feels like it's serving a purpose. Every piece has its place. Capano gets Marshall to safety, but not before Capano is shot down by a falling helicopter, and Harrington finds him to get him to help. Frances heads for the Elephant Rock, and so does Marshall. Harrington feeds Capano a mushroom in the hospital, and finally, Frances and Marshall reunite and realize they have a lot more to accomplish. I never thought I'd be amazed by an end scene with Enya playing over it, and yet here we are. Jonas is a prisoner of his own body. Capano makes a full recovery. Rick cultivates a new food spice from the mushroom, and the stage is set for the next season as Hildy adds the mushroom to a town's water supply. There's no joke that undercuts any of what's happening in this episode. There's no slapstick moment that tears you away. Even when Rick is coming up with Sparkle, that just makes sense for his character. And again, you see he got to where he was for a reason. He's a smart marketing executive. Sure, it's for all the dumbest reasons, but he does know what he's doing. This show is a visual spectacle, and every time you watch it through, you get something new. This finale showed that there wasn't a single piece out of place, that every bit of this season was carefully crafted to pull as much emotion out of you as possible. While things are set up, you still don't exactly know how it's going to go when the show comes back, and that's the magic of a perfectly crafted finale like this, or like Operation Prom in Season 4 of The Venture Brothers. The show could end right here and be incredible, but knowing there's another season in development elevates it so much more. Raid is a reuniting 10 out of 10. Yeah, not exactly what you expect from a show executive produced by Mike Judge and Greg Daniels, huh? But they definitely know a winning idea when they see one. And please, check the series out on Max. I think that's the best way to watch it, honestly. It's not edited or censored, and it gives you the full picture in a binge setting. It's fantastic. Do not let this review be a substitute for experiencing the show. You will grow as a person if you watch it. I guarantee it. And then when you're done, when you're left raw and needing more and need something to pick you up to give you a good chuckle, just go on ahead and search for Royal Crackers and watch both perfectly crafted seasons of that bad boy. That's right, this was just a thinly veiled attempt to get more people to watch Royal Crackers so that it can get a third season. I got you. No, I'm just a big fan. But they are both great artifacts for this modern idea of what long-form Adult Swim can be. Where Common Side Effects shirks all the traditional Adult Swim ideas and doesn't go for a quick laugh or even really any laughs at all, setting itself apart from the crowd, Royal Crackers is a perfection of that tried and true Adult Swim formula. Outstanding jokes, terrific writing, and wonderful comedic voice acting. Where Common Side Effects is surreal yet human, Royal Crackers is familiar yet exaggerated. but together they show you the possibility of what long-form Adult Swim shows can be. Short form, it's really just Smiling Friends. I could say YOLO, but that feels like a hat on a hat at that point, because they're both Michael Cusack. Anyways, that's season 1! Anything you think I was right on? Wrong on? What was your favorite episode? Least favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you saw, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends we're out here. I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but it's true. Common Side Effects is more anime than a traditional Adult Swim show. It trusts the viewer to be a more aware watcher and to come along on a journey they may not have known they needed to go on. It shows you the possibility of animation as a medium of storytelling and will go down in history as one of the greatest animated artifacts of all time, make no mistake. This is a perfect storm of vocal talent, creativity, and a fantastic spectacle of how important animation is now more than ever, and I sure do hope Warner is paying attention to its success. Animation like this, and yes, like Royal Crackers, must be celebrated and championed so it can't just be buried for a tax write-off. Tell your friends, your enemies, families about these incredible shows and share your passions with the world. Who knows what could happen if we're just more passionate about things? Anyway, that's going to do it for us here at the Lecture Hall. Want to support the channel? Consider joining our membership or Patreon programs today. $2 a month gets you special polls, posts, and even your name on this fancy list, yeah! Just did a little bit extra because they deserve extra. Thank you all so much for watching, and like always, remember to stay strong, keep fighting that good fight, and remember that you matter. A rising tide lifts all ships, and I can feel one hell of a wave a-coming. And do watch Paranoia Agent. It is trippy. Goodbye, everybody, and I'll see you next time.